Hello and welcome. This is Michael Bartlett and Merrylin LeBlanc for deep dives with new perspectives. We just started sharing our little Mercury retrograde and Aquarius experiences because, we're both Aquarius suns. But go ahead, you were going to say what one of your experiences was.
Oh, one of them had to do with dealing with the government. I had an issue that, why something isn't happening. And you can't get a hold of anybody. I call this number and they go, all circuits are busy, and hang up. They don't even let you wait. And, it's extremely, and the email has a robot responding with options that aren't your issue.
Welcome to the Aquarian age.
Wonderful. Other things that have happened to me with Mercury retrograde, though, they've just been little things that aren't, I just go, this is usually what I do. Oh, Mercury's retrograde. Okay. I don't dwell on it. I just go, okay, this is just one of those glitches. Move on. But, some things like this issue I really need to get resolved is like, okay, when might that happen in a COVID world?
Yeah, and I've also experienced, and I've also seen other people through sharing on Facebook, clarification on relationships with people who we consider to be friends who maybe aren't. Maybe others who don't have it. It's interesting. We have to remember, Aquarius is opposite Leo, and sometimes people may appear to have our best interests at heart, but they really don't. They're really just out for their own personal gain. And I think sometimes that's hard for us Aquarians to see. At least I think it is for me personally.
Well, yeah, because Aquarians, even though we're very individualistic and independent, let me do my thing, and but we also acknowledge that others have that right as well. And that, life isn't just about me. It's about lots of things, and it's the beauty of it all. I mean, Aquarians, I think, are very tuned in to the systemic world in terms of all kinds of inter and extra relationships. And I'm not just talking about human relationships, but that is definitely included. But
Organizational systems, right?
right.
That's Aquarius. And that's humanity. That's like, who was it who had ant farms as kids? Usually the Aquarians. I wonder what it's going to be like.
Did you have an ant farm?
I didn't, but I always wanted one. My mother would never let me have one.
I didn't.
It's also kind of Scorpio moon too, right? It's like, seeing what's going on underneath, behind the scenes.
Yeah, when I've seen those artificial ant forms, you can get these containers that you can see down under. It is fascinating. There's like, wow. And ants are extremely social, in terms of, I don't mean social in the way that we like as friends socialize. They're social in the way that um, they see the connections of the community and how important each member of the community is in what they do.
Who else does that? Someone who's had a birthday yesterday.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't have a birthday cake, but that's okay.
Well, here's your birthday cake. And actually, what better a birthday cake for an Aquarian than an image of one?
And it's a rainbow birthday cake. How even more in terms of the topic, the rainbow, all the colors, and then that rainbow connection has been used very much in integrating activities and groups in terms of acknowledging our many differences, some of them rather odd and quirky, some of them pretty natural. Okay, we're different from our siblings unless we're an identical twin. I don't think you are, and I'm not.
That's the beauty with Aquarius, right? It's got that Saturn part that has, and the Uranus part. There's that part where we're all the same, and that part where we're uniquely different. And, and that's, like, where is our place within that? Oh, are you that little blue dot here, or are you this green bloop here, or are you this purple zigzag? It's the beauty of all of it together, right? It isn't like if this cake just had one of those, you go like, okay, that's kind of neat, but like, wow, how beautiful when we can step back and see that. And that's the Aquarian ability, right? That periscopic ability to kind of like look at things from afar. And so today, the impeachment trial begins. I mean, this is a huge week, right? The impeachment trial begins, Chinese New Year, a stellium in Aquarius,
New
Mercury,
moon, a new moon.
a new moon, which of course is what signifies a new moon in Aquarius, which signifies the Chinese New Year, right?
Right. Well, the Chinese New Year is based on the lunar calendar, and so it has to do with the uh, the the new and the full moons and the equinoxes and solstices that determine. I don't remember the exact definition for the Chinese, but it's this is the second new moon after the winter solstice,
Right.
and that might be part of the formula, but
And
I'd have to go back and review that.
yeah. And it's
Did
very,
you do
and it's the year of the ox this year for Chinese New Year. And it's very much, it's, to me, it's like all the traits of like Taurus, right?
Yeah, there are some. I have a Chinese acupuncturist. He's actually from China and, began his practice of acupuncture while he was still in China. And um, it's interesting because he's a rooster and I'm a snake. And I don't know what you are. What are you? Do you know what you are in
I
the
am a wood dragon.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, you told me this once
Yeah.
before, now I recall. Oh, interesting combination. But one of the things he said about the Chinese New Year's was that this is it's going to be a better year, an easier year. This was just his personal reaction from following the Chinese New Year's. And we're ending the snake, and he says, I mean, just think of a
Rat.
snake in general. Oh
Wasn't it
no,
the
yeah,
rat?
right. I'm a snake.
Yeah.
Oh my
Okay.
just think of a rat in general. And it, without looking up you can, there's all kinds of stuff about this on the internet. You just have to do, search Chinese New Year's or what year of the rat, year of the ox, and there's several links. I don't know. I've never counted them, but if
Well,
people are interested, they could always go into this. And this is yeah, strong. You think of the bull for Taurus, yes, and reliable, yes.
patient,
I don't know
methodical.
about fair. I don't know about fair. I don't know what they mean. If they mean like fair as in justice, or do they mean fair as in complexion? What do you think they mean by fair there?
Probably fair of nature. I mean, I think at least how I would interpret that on from our standpoint, from the Torah, is the Venus aspect, right? That fairness that actually can be dually seen physically as well as in the way one comports oneself.
Right. And the calmness. I have several nieces and nephews who are Tauri. They're
Because
Tauruses.
every 12 years, right? So you just think about 12 years ago, it was Taurus again, and 12 years before that. The rat's the only one who can steal from the dragon. So I'm very much aware of the rat energy. But the rat is very,
Oh, so how was the past year for
well, it's
you?
funny because the whole story with, I don't know if you know this, with the Chinese zodiac, is that there's a whole story about them going across this river and all that, but we don't really have to go on that right now. But for me, actually, it was like it's been an incredible year. I mean, it's really been a lot of work, and I think what I was going to say more about the rat with the rat to the ox is that kind of frenetic energy of the rat, because the rat's kind of runs around acting from a very kind of a survival basis, right? It's always wanting to take. It's not knowing how it's going to last, so it takes things from others and it hoards them. And then the ox is like, hey, everything's going to be fine. Don't push me. I mean, after everything that's gone on this last year, I mean, I think people can use a little bit of energy, kind of sharing, saving that and feeling that kind of a
Mm.
sense. But yeah, actually, this last year's been work, 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 and it looks like it's going to continue for me. So I'm very excited and honored.
Yeah, I would say that, on my part too, I've had to deal with things that I never dreamed I'd have to deal with. So it was frenetic in some ways, not physically, but emotionally and mentally, yes. So what are all these things that are flashing on the
Oh,
screen right
I'm
now?
really sorry for going back and forth. I started using these for doing kind of like an overview for the month. I thought it's just such a big week. I thought we'd show them, but like tomorrow we have the Mercury Mars square. So talking
And
about,
so is this depicting that?
yeah. So here on the left is Mars and Taurus kind of chilling out, having his grapes and sipping on some wine. And here's Mercury and Aquarius. I've shown you these images before, the Astro Theater.
So
Where
this is me. I have Mars, but I would say the Chase Lounge, not so much the drink. I find not that I don't imbibe occasionally, but the occasional has become over the years less and less and less. I'm just I'm fine with or I'm fine without.
chocolate maybe instead, or good food, right? I mean, food is
Yeah, you know
important
what
to
it would
you.
be is a cup of hot chocolate or a cup of tea lattes. I've been drinking a lot of tea and then whipping up some heavy cream and putting it on top. So I've been having tea lattes lately. So that would be me. Yes. That would be my
And you've
action.
got Mercury in Aquarius, yeah. So like tomorrow, you're going to have a little bit of a kind of a in the process of having two of your planets having a return this year.
Oh yeah.
Well, among others.
Yes, they do not exactly, but they do naturally square each other in my chart. And
So what's that like?
what's that like? Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I have to go back to childhood. Um, I have two brothers, and one of them is a Scorpio moon, like we are. And strangely enough, well, both of my brothers and I've always gotten along with each other, but he and I have always had the same intellectual interests,
Mm.
and that has continued throughout our lives. But he also, my this is my oldest brother, he also has a quick temper.
Mm.
And so, not only is he represented by Mars, Mars represents an aspect of our fathers and our brothers, as well as other men in general, is one of the aspects of Mars, besides our own personal energy. And so he would have these temper tantrums that were horrible to watch, just horrible. One time he got so mad he punched the refrigerator and put a dent in it, in the door. I don't know what his hand was like, but my reaction was, I will never be like that. And so over my early years of childhood, I suppressed my own anger, and it took me years to learn how to express it because it was always, like, I'm not going to go that far. And I remember one time I was so mad at a friend who had said she was going to do this thing with me. And then she changed her mind, but she didn't call and tell me. So I went to pick her up and she told me there. And I started yelling at her, and it was like 7:30 in the morning, and she says, "Oh, the neighbors." And I said, expletive, the neighbors.
Right.
Loud. And I left, and I thought, and I felt this euphoria high. So I immediately called that brother, and I said, all those times you get angry and you have this tantrum thing going on? I said, how do you feel afterwards? Do you feel high and you? Oh, he says, oh yeah. Oh, yes, it's very important. I said, well, I just felt it for the first time. So I knew I had gotten to the point of being able to express my anger.
Yeah, because that's actually a really beautiful example of it, because Taurus likes to bear things, right? There's such a way of like, oh, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it. And Aquarius is over here. Mercury and Aquarius, like, oh, life is pretty and it's ideal and it's fantastic and da 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 da. And it's like, blah, blah, blah. And then like, it's like just little by little. I don't know if you remember that movie, Witches of Eastwick. There's this scene where the goody two shoes one finally is like spitting up cherries. It's like,
Oh,
there's a way in which there's this way that, and it's funny because it reminds me also of that show, that movie, The Secret. These people who talk about like, oh, just affirm it and it'll make it be. Like, it's not going to affirm as long as you're full of BS, right? Because that's what it is with Taurus and Scorpio. Now it's full. And if you don't like let it out, you're just full of it. You're full of shit. I mean, it's really that simple, right? And so what you got to do, I mean, I think that's also a Aquarius Scorpio moon thing. There's just something about like, it's like we take Scorpio Scorpio and Taurus has this way of like taking until it's full. And then the bad part is it becomes a shit explosion and it doesn't really care where it lands.
well, that's also interesting because you think of bulls, you know, they're they do. I mean, they do have to graze a lot to get everything they need, but they also, they also charge when they've had it, or just like stay out of my space. I've had enough of you.
Leave me alone. I want to enjoy my latte and my, with the dollop of cream on top. I mean, that's so perfectorian. I love that.
I want to mention one other thing too, though, the combination of these two. I was, Mars, Mercury. Well, Mercury, one of the things in terms of what they represent in terms of people in your life, Mercury represents our siblings. So here was my sibling brother expressing anger in a last quarter phase where, you have to kind of reflect on it and consider whether future behaviors are going to to do that. So it's a perfect example of the whole configuration that I had.
Yeah.
Where I had to kind of stuff it for not old enough to. I mean, I this was from some of my early. I mean, I probably wasn't even in school yet when I first witnessed some of this. But yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty. These are all, it takes a
what
little
does the
while to
Mercury have? Mercury has a cat. Is that a
Mercury.
cat? Is that a
No,
cat?
this is the vessel pouring forth the Aquarian,
Oh,
it's a
Aquarius.
flower
The
child.
oh yes, pouring out the wisdom.
Love, love and peace and happiness. Until it's had enough, right? Because Aquarius also, to be honest, is, it also reaches its limit. That our sun moon are also in a third quarter. This is a third quarter. In order to see something as a third quarter, you have to look at the slower moving planet, which here in this case is Mars, and the faster moving planet, which is in Mercury. Their relationship is in a third quarter aspect. Mercury is getting close to becoming back in conjunction, creating a new birth cycle with Mars again. So it's like gone through this whole new cycle of all these experiences. And it's like, hey, I want to share my journey with you. And right at this point, Mars is like, I really don't want to hear it. I need some space. Talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. And then, so just before this happens, because this is like, so I would encourage people, what is it that you need to say? What is it that you've been holding back from saying to your partner, to the people you're in relationship? The key with this, I think, is like, how can you do it in a graceful manner that isn't about making the other person wrong or making them the enemy? That's what my lesson's been lately, is just realizing, like, what, that other person is human, and they're, like what you said earlier, they're entitled to who they want to be and who they are. But the truth is, what I'm starting to understand is that some people are operating from such a very different framework than I am, that me trying to explain where I'm coming from would take so much. Like, after a few years of knowing me, if you don't get that, then I don't think you're ever really going to get that. And I don't want to really waste my time. And I don't know if that's like an age thing that I've gotten to where I am right now, but it's like, and because it's like what I realize, like, I don't want to keep like negating who I am to make who that person is and how they treat me be okay. You understand what I mean?
I do understand what you mean. I do indeed. The interesting thing that you triggered in terms of, and yesterday was my birthday, uh, And part of the day had to do with a conversation. This is very much a conversation that need to be said about sex. And I'm not going to say any more about it, but still it fits and I hadn't really, that really hadn't dawned on me that within this transiting situation, you know, there's so many different layers of what happens with any of the planets and their connections and stuff. It's multifaceted. It's not just one thing, it can be several things. But basically, this is where it's really important for an astrologer who's working with a client to know what level the person is working on. And I, you know, I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I don't think that people should expect their astrologer to simply say things to them, because some of what they say may not be applicable at all in terms of the level of consciousness at which you're acting, and the archetypes that you are dealing with at the time.
That's a good
And so
point.
some of that information, like what's going on, you know, if you see this configuration in somebody's chart as a transit, well, what's going on with your energy level and your conversation? That's the kind of a generic level about it. But you know, what's happening with men in your life, and what's happening with siblings, and what's happening with anger, and what's happening with getting work done, and you know, all kinds of things. It's there's so many different, there's a list. I have a book that the author is Michael Muncasey. He has like a whole page of and it has to do with midpoints, but of combinations of a planet. Like if you were looking at Mercury combined with Mars alone, a whole page of just possible subjects that would come up, you know, so a few dozen.
And you know, these signs are also fixed, right? So they vary, you know, they don't tend to give in easily. You know,
Right.
and with Mars in that position, Mars is kind of, I think, Mars I don't think is in a good situation in Taurus, but I kind of see Mars as kind of at rest in Taurus, giving it an opportunity to kind of, enjoy the physical plane a little bit. And it's funny you say sex, because that is an aspect of it. I mean, this can be pre-sex or post-sex, sitting on the sofa enjoying that. And then here's, that, Aquarian thing saying, wow, isn't there something more than the physical plane? We have, we have a duty? Don't we have to get out there and do something? And it's like, yeah, but how do we balance these two parts of ourselves? I think is actually really important, especially during this time. But going on like tomorrow, I mean, the 11th is actually even more incredible, right? We've got a new moon in Aquarius, so sun moon conjunction. We got Venus Jupiter conjunct, right? Mercury's in there still doing his little backwards dance. And Saturn's there. I mean, that's like an Aquarian. This is like a hair reunion or a Woodstock reunion, right? Like, woohoo! Let's party down, hippie peeps. Let's get our freak on.
And they all have unusual hairdos. I was going to say strange, but not totally strange.
Right.
Venus isn't totally strange.
She's always beautiful, regardless of where she is. She can't help it.
And the moon with her kind of wild hair.
It's like what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets in Aquarius. We haven't had this since what, 1970, 1960s, 1970s. When was that last huge stellium in Aquarius?
Well, we did have, but they weren't together. We did have Saturn about not even 30 years ago in Aquarius. But I don't know. I didn't look that up.
I just remember meeting someone who had like a stellium in his first house, and that incredible
in Aquarius.
Yeah. I think I've told you that story before. I mean, he's such a great Aquarian story. He's like, he comes up to me at one of the astrology conferences. No astrologer can read my chart. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
right.
okay.
I remember that
And I didn't
comment.
take the bait. I'm just like, I'm going to sit there. So finally, of course, he pushed a little bit more, and I said, and he showed it to me because I wasn't going to ask. The worst thing you can do as an astrologer is ask to see someone's chart. So he shows me his chart, and I looked at him like, oh, I know exactly why no one can read your chart. And he looked at me with this dumbfounded look, and he said, why? And I like, you have a stellium and an Aquarius in the first house. There's no one here who can tell you who you are. I mean, look at this. I mean, this is, 6 planets focused on the energy of individuation and uniqueness, yet somehow bound in its connection with humanity.
And that's
Saturn, the traditional ruler, Jupiter, the esoteric ruler, Sun. So we got the moon, the way we nurture and feel, the sun, the way we shine out, Mercury, the way we express ourselves, move and communicate, Jupiter, the way we expand and philosophize and understand things in a greater way, Venus, our values, our ways of relating to other, and Saturn, the way we structure, create boundaries and understand the right things. And then, here's this impeachment going on. Here's this trial, other trials that are going on for the people who were involved in the January 6th. How much do we show compassion? I heard the other day, and maybe you can verify this for me. I heard that we don't have domestic terrorism laws. I thought that happened when 9/11 happened, that we started that there started to be laws for people who were considered domestic terrorists.
Yeah, I don't really know per se, but yeah, after 9/11, there were several things that were enacted, and you had Homeland Security and the Patriot Act. The
Right,
Patriot Act, and I'm
right.
not sure exactly what was in that. So, but that is somewhat surprising. Yes, yes.
So you have how many planets in Aquarius yourself?
I have 3 planets in Aquarius and 1 asteroid in Aquarius. So it's considered a stellium, but
Yeah.
not to this degree that you're depicting,
So
that we're
how
going
are your
beyond.
Aquarian peeps handling it? Because you've got what? You've got the sun there, right there. You've got Mercury and you've got Venus. So you're having like a triple return, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. In a way, you're kind of asking me to look at a solar return chart, which I actually
No,
did.
I'm not. I'm not. But I mean,
No,
if
you're
you
not.
want to, that's awesome.
but but I find it very hard. It's almost like interpreting moon cycle stuff, because it's so personal, and about kind of mundane everyday stuff. But a technique that I have found reflective for the year for me, that sort of works, is to look at the phase, and the phase, the distance of that the moon and the sun are in, and it's a balsamic phase. And balsamic phases, are taking everything that you've learned over the past, and in this case, because I'm looking at a year, the solar year, looking at over the past year, and what has happened, what have I learned, etc., and putting that all together like in a cauldron, like a witch's brew, and going, what can I cook up with this? What is ahead? So it's a reflective time, and it's also the beginning. The balsamic phase in the natural zodiac starts in the middle of Aquarius and
Mm.
then into Pisces. So it has this kind of inventive, innovative notion to it, as well as imagination, and what can I imagine the next year to have, and how do I want it to be? So it's very reflective in that respect. In another respect, I look at the phase relationship, because even though it's a balsamic phase, it isn't exactly what we would call 316 degrees is the exact, I think, yeah, that's the exact balsamic phase. And the moon had already moved a couple of degrees beyond that. And so the phase was, I believe it's 318 in the sign of Aquarius, which is symbolized by a man unmasked. It's like some parts of me that have not been visible to a certain audience, I mean, I'm saying this is very general, are going to be made public over this year. And I mean, one of the things, yes.
Look what we're doing right here. I mean, going from being a radio personality to this. I mean, if that isn't and it's online, it's in, on the Aquarian side, it's so you're spot on as always.
Yes, so this is one of the things I thought, oh, I have to do more. And I mean, and I have a website now, and I've there's some changes I need to do to the website and actually want to do. And it's something that I've seen you do on your website. And that is periodically post what I'm sensing astrologically. And it can be it can be as short as a couple words or a sentence or a paragraph or several paragraphs, but not, for this, we usually tune into a subject. And today it's like, whoa, look at all this activity in Aquarius. And for Moonwise, it's similar. There's a subject like the show for this past Saturday was on the new moon cycle that happens. So if people who are listening to this, want to know more about the moon cycle that begins Thursday, that they can go to ksfr.org and look for the programs tab on the homepage, and under it the podcast tab, and look for Moonwise and listen to that show. There's there's a subject matter, a title for each of the shows, so they can find it that way. But yeah, it's sort of like my visions of the future need to be manifest during the year ahead.
Beautiful.
And so that's what that's the kernel that I take away from a solar return chart.
Perfect. Actually, what I was meaning more, because you actually wear these energies, you've been living with 3 of these, like I said, Venus, Mercury, and Sun your whole life. And these being 3 of the most rapidly moving planets in our zodiacal experience, like what is your experience of living this sort of energy? So that's something a little more generalized, which that's what I mean, because you kind of hit on a little bit. I mean, the truth is with this energy, Aquarius is really about synthesizing. It's about getting these understandings each time. And with, what I like to think of with returns, of course we think of it as just simply solar returns, but of course, Mercury and Venus are making those returns even quicker because they move around the sun even quicker. And each time they go around the sun, each time they have this cycle, they're bringing back a whole wealth of experience back to the self, in a sense. Like it's like going out into the garden and collecting all the different vegetables, storing them up in the house, and then slowly being able to eat them and process them, and then using them away for the next cycle. That's kind of like how I see that. So like when
I'm thinking of a salad when you say that.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, however, and here, and of course, I mean, Aquarius has the biggest salad bowl server right there, and then later on the dressing starts coming out.
Well, yeah, the picture has all kinds of things in it.
It is the magician's hat, to be honest. I mean, if anything is a magician's hat, this is the magician's hat.
And coincidentally, yesterday I got something I had ordered and delivered, and it was a part of it was apple cider vinegar with spices that I really like. And so the imagery is so appropriate for these days in my mind. And the other thing, some of my high school friends, we've been meeting on Zoom. Well, they've been meeting on Zoom, and I joined them for the first time this month. And in terms, energy precedes and it follows. So like in terms of this unmasked actor, whatever that happens, one of my high school friends said, I remember how Merrylin helped me learn chemistry. And that was all she said. And I said, yeah, as I recall it, I said to you one morning, I said, I can't go to school today. We were going to have a chemistry test. And I said, I said, I can't do it. Or maybe I even said it to her the evening before. I don't remember that part. But I said, so will you go and take the test and then tell me what's in it? And so, this was something that we had kept between us for how many years, I will not say. But, and there were, and I was the student body president. So this is kind of
And here you are,
all politicians have secrets.
and here you are using this platform as a confessional. It's so perfect. And just like what you said about unmasking it, it's because the truth is, and I think that's another thing that I think Aquarius and Scorpio both also really appreciate is embrace the absurdity of our own personal humanity, right? We're all flawed in our own beautifully imperfect ways, and we're all in the act of becoming. And isn't it wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? And as long as
We should have lots of mercy on people,
and especially on ourselves. I mean, to be honest, I think the reason why there's such little mercy for other people is we're all hard on ourselves. I mean, it takes a long time to learn compassion and selflessness and understanding the right way of being, and not making other people wrong in order to not have to be in a relationship with them.
What you just said about, how it's hard for us to admit and then have compassion reminds me of something I'd read in the near-death experience literature by Ibn Alexander, about, when people have had these experiences, they've come to the conclusion that as souls after death, that, and we learned this in Catholicism, that after we die, everything that we've ever done will be known. And I always kind of like, really?
Even that time?
And yet what he wrote in this book was that often the person, who passed or is having this experience is the hardest judge on him or herself. Yeah.
So with that, I mean, I think this is probably a great way to close, because the truth is, find ways to let go of your judge, find ways to find acceptance with yourself and others, allowing ourselves to be human, allowing ourselves to find our way, because that's what we're in the process. We're in a new age, whether people want to call it the Aquarian age or not. We have to start looking at things in a very different way. If you like what we're sharing here, please hit like, please share with your friends, please subscribe, please share, we like to get our word out. Hopefully you're enjoying what we're sharing and saying. I can be reached at michael@coremichael.com. And Merrylin, what about you?
I can be reached at moonwiseastrology.com and several places. Yes. And you'd find my email there, actually, moonwiseastrology.com. But yeah, have a great week, everybody, and or a great time whenever you watch this particular video on YouTube. And we'll talk next week, huh?
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.